So I'm going to talk about challenges to SMEs implementing Level 2 BIM. I'm also going to start off with a little bit on the Open BIM Skills Survey, which was conducted and BIM4SMEs helped promote. It's quite an interesting one. I'm not completely sure exactly what the total number of people who did the survey is, but there's some useful and interesting data in there anyway. Obviously that's me, you've already heard. My job at Sumo is basically to take anything that they survey, which is below ground services, archaeological prospection and measured building stuff, and turn it into models and find ways of extracting data from it. Come from a design background originally. So first, BIM4SMEs. What does BIM4SME do? We're a relatively small group. There are 14 of us in the leadership and the core of the group, and as one of the BIM4s, we're probably a little bit more active and more well formed than most. We run a lot of events, particularly you may have heard of the RICS BIM4SMEs Awards last year. Had about 150 people come to the event and some really great success stories from that. We're running it again this year and next year, also sponsored by RICS. We also are engaged in active research and education of the SME community. At the moment, we've got a project which some of you may have heard of called the Super KTP, or now I think it's been rebranded as KT for BIM, which is effectively a simulated Level 2 BIM project. And we've got representatives from pretty much the entire supply chain, from client right down to specialist subcontractors and operators involved in this, basically just running through the process of using the Level 2 processes and guidances and looking for where things don't seem to fit together particularly well for us. I'd qualify that by saying on the BIM4SME Slack group, which is how we all communicate, there's actually a channel called What is Level 2 BIM? And certainly within the group, I would say most of us aren't completely decided or in agreement as to what Level 2 BIM is, which is interesting. And obviously, there's engagement with the wider industry on behalf of SMEs, because whilst the challenges that I'm going to speak about, you probably all know the stereotypes. SMEs are small, they're a bit rubbish, they don't have enough money, they're disorganised. There are all sorts of other challenges which are external to the SMEs that make life a lot harder for them. So I'll just run through a little bit of this Open BIM Skills report and how it relates to SMEs. So obviously here you can see these segments. Everything apart from the green is qualified as micro, small or medium sized. Micro is 1 to 10 for those that don't know. Small is 10 to 49, and medium is 50 to 249 people. So obviously the 2/3 of the respondents to the survey are SMEs, though obviously that's across a very wide range of companies. And you can see here that these two questions, how do you have BIM specific roles in your company? The general answer seems to be about 3/4 of people are answering yes. Which is certainly interesting. And then the second question there is, do you currently have sufficient BIM expertise in the company? And the answer is a little bit less there. You've still got 2/3 answering yes to that. But there are questions about this. I mean, do we believe these figures? There's already in some of the other presentations been scepticism about responses to these surveys. And I suppose one of the things that one can't get around is that a lot of the time people responding to BIM surveys are people working in BIM already, and so perhaps things get skewed a little bit that way. Are these measures really correct? This is a really interesting one. Of all of the companies, all the people who responded to the questions, 43% said that they contract in outside consultancy or other services to help their company perform BIM. So not many people are doing it by themselves, which I don't know. You might say that that's to be expected. But equally, I think if you've got the time, and especially when you're small and fit into a small part of the market, this is a bit of a surprise that more people aren't doing more themselves. For me. So, has your company recruited anyone to specifically meet the requirements of Level 2 BIM? Interestingly, here, this is a bit scary. 25% yes. 60% no, but believe they already have the relevant experience. I don't know quite how that fits with this one where 43% are contracting in people to help them, and then a relatively small, probably 15%, saying no, not been able to find suitable candidates. That seems amazing given the number of people claiming to be experts and gurus these days. And also 11% say no, don't need level 2 expertise for the time being. Well, wouldn't it be great if only 11% of the industry were not committed to being level 2 compliant? So, I think the final slide on the survey. Does BIM level 2 mean that some traditional roles are now redundant? This is really interesting to me, and I'm slightly disappointed that we didn't sort of delve a little bit more into what this actually means. 20% of people are saying some traditional roles are redundant, and 80% are saying no traditional roles are redundant, which is what I would be inclined to say. I don't think that with additional training, people who are working in construction can not get up to speed on BIM. And then from that, if yes, can those with redundant skills be easily trained to undertake new BIM roles? Well, hopefully none of us in this room are part of the grey sector, which is 20%. No, skills are not transferable. I'd be really interested to know what people think those are. And 15% yes, but training is not available. That's an interesting one. And 62% say yes, those skills can be transferred to new BIM roles. So now what I'm going to talk about is what I see are the challenges and what we believe at BIM4SMEs are the challenges to SMEs working principally in a level 2 BIM environment or in a level 2 BIM project. Now, what I will say with this is that a lot of the time you find that you're in this situation where you want to be level 2 compliant. I mean, I've been involved in level 1 document, the BS 1192 Part 1, and the following documents, particularly PAS Part 2. And when they first started to come out, I was really enthusiastic about them. In my former life, I was a small architectural practitioner. Really enthusiastic about them because what I like the most is when clients ask me the same questions. Pre-qualification follows the same format. Standards are standards across multiple projects. Procurement methods are consistent. And the 1192 suite appeared to promise all of that. Whether it is delivering that at the moment, whether it will deliver that in the future, I think is more likely, but I certainly don't think it is at the moment. SMEs now, today, working on level 2 projects are interesting in that I think we can always end up feeling a little bit confused by the way that the wider world, the client body, the big main contractors respond to us. In that, on the one hand, we're told that we're versatile, we're innovators, and that we can provide some of the best of level 2 BIM. And then on the other end of things, we're told that we're not up to speed. We need teaching, we need educating, we need to be told how to work, what software to use, what tools to use, And it can be very frustrating because you get into a conversation with somebody who isn't familiar with you, and you can end up. I mean, I'd like to think that I'm a seasoned BIM person, a BIM champion, a BIM evangelist, but I still bump into people who haven't met me before who talk to me as if I'm an idiot when they know I'm from an SME. It is a fair to say that this is partly because there's a very wide range of skill levels and commitment in SMEs, but that shouldn't mean that SMEs are sort of pushed to the back of the queue, and it certainly shouldn't mean that SMEs, because they effectively make up the majority of our industry, should be forced to work in ways which stops them delivering the value that they've historically delivered to projects. I'm not saying that means don't make them follow the standards. I'm saying understand how your SMEs work, understand what they deliver, and make sure that the things that you're asking of them will allow them to carry on behaving in a way that is consistent with the reason that you've previously employed them as good, high-quality businesses. One of the issues that SMEs have, and this obviously I've turned it around so it fits on the slide actually, but this diagram from PAS 1192 Part 2 shows is just how many stakeholders in a Level 2 BIM project have absolutely no control over whether it's been set up right, whether the standards are being followed, whether the client's committed to it. And nearly all of those people who are tossed on the waves of these, in a sense, what I would call non-standard Level 2 projects, Level 2 by name only, it's the SMEs that suffer because they're expecting things to work in a particular way, and often they don't. And that's a real issue for a lot of SMEs. Obviously, at BIM4SME, we ask the question, what can we provide? And we're trying to support people and companies on all of these levels. At BIM4SMEs, we've got individuals who effectively represent all of these bodies. Some of them effectively client advisors. I don't think we've got any clients that are actually part of the body. The problem is if all of these people aren't supported in the BIM projects that they work on, partly by BIM4SMEs because we can do a lot for them, but equally by clients and the contractors and the high-level designers that they are often working with, then it gets very difficult for the SMEs to help the situation. And that I think these to some extent where you fit into to the situation as an SME is one of the biggest challenges of all. Obviously, BIM4SME can provide help in finding the right documentation, and our website is constantly updated and improved with some great. We've got links. I think we've probably got the most comprehensive set of links to construction documents. Certainly, if you sit it next to the level2.org website, which I think has got 5 documents that it links through to, something like that. Maybe it's a few more than that. But we've got links, and also Terry Goff, who will speak tomorrow, who's our education officer, has been working on how all of these standards relate to everything, or relate to each other. And these are standards of procurement, standards of naming, standards of procedure, standards of pre-qualification. It's an incredible diagram. I'm sure you'll see it tomorrow if you're here. Then obviously we can help with training and education, and this is another situation where it's pretty tough for SMEs. I think we're all familiar that there are no shortage of BIM gurus, BIM experts, BIM consultants who are willing to help you out. The phrase that always springs to mind is a quote my dad used to use from the Goon Show. Open your wallet and say after me, help yourself. And that's the way a lot of the time it seems with some of the sort of private training schemes. You know, and I'm not saying that SMEs shouldn't be serious and invest in training and invest in education. There's no question that BIM requires a big investment, but at the moment, the routes that you take and the path that you take, especially as if you look at a lot of the training and certification that is around at the moment, they tend to be focused more towards the top end of BIM, as opposed to, you know, if you're a specialist subcontractor, what is relevant to you in the context of BIM is where you fit into the process, not what the people above you should be doing. I mean, all that illustrates to you is how frustrating it can be when clients or their advisors don't actually follow the processes. Obviously, there's software choices as well, and this is another really difficult one. SMEs, a lot of the time, you'll find, especially in the manufacturing sectors, SMEs are already using advanced 3D software for fabrication, and then they'll find that they're being told to use different software and not being able to fit in with the process. And this sort of thing happens all along the way. I always, when I'm talking to SMEs, one of the things that I regularly say to them in terms of winning new business and retaining existing clients is that they need to focus on making the information that they produce as easy to access as possible to the users of that information at whatever level in the project food chain they sit. But equally, on the other side, I repeatedly see people up the food chain who are consumers of SME information making it almost as difficult as possible for SMEs to provide value to the to the people that they're working with by insisting that they use tools that are inappropriate or deliver data in formats which are obscure or non-standard. Oh dear, spelling mistake, sorry about that. Ironic that it's quality spelled wrong. Nice. One of the other issues that particularly affects SMEs is that they're regularly reliant on data that is produced by other parties. And this is it's another really difficult thing. I mean, even if you look in the consultant team, quantity surveyors working successfully on a BIM project are entirely reliant on people producing high quality models with good quality data in them. I remember about a year ago, BIM4SMEs did a team, one of the Build Live projects together. At the time I was using Ecosim, so I said we should exchange information using IFC, and the rest of the team all had pieces of software which were not all Autodesk products. Some of them were Revit. Some of them were using some, I think CostX was in there as well, and we had the energy consultant using IES. But I suggested that we use IFC to do file transfer, and everybody was like, "Oh God, no, we mustn't do that. It'll be a complete disaster." And my response was, "Look, this is a competition. There's no liability here. Wouldn't it be good if you knew that you could use IFC with your software?" And so we got on with it, and we didn't really do a design job, to be honest. I mean, the guys in my office spent most of their time putting data into the models rather than focusing on the design of the building. So we had a rather mundane-looking result. But the response was great. The QS said got stuff into CostX, and because things had been numbered and classified, they were able to work with them easily. Likewise, the structural engineer brought geometry in, no problem. And equally, we pushed the models out to IES using GBXML, and that worked really well. So we immediately had this trial project where a more interoperable and data exchange which suited the tools that people were working on and were comfortable working with worked very nicely. Recruitment. This is grim. I don't dislike recruitment consultants. Everybody's got to do their job, haven't they? I think probably my singular worst experience with a recruitment consultant was when I was working with my wife, and somebody from a firm rung me in the morning and said, was I looking for a BIM technician? And then an hour later, somebody from the same consultancy rung my wife, who I was working with, and tried to headhunt her. Needless to say, I rung them back and said, never call here again. But obviously, getting the right people in is important. And I think one of the that is an issue for SMEs, because you certainly pay a premium for BIM staff. But equally, where SMEs often require people to, in a sense, have a wider scope, you end up being very employable when you're working for an SME, and so we frequently have a real problem with headhunters targeting us, and you can find your staff leaving. So it's a really difficult balance, the whole recruitment consultant side of things, and I don't have an answer to that. Okay, so the gloves are off now. 5 minutes. Yeah, cool. Excellent. I'll finish on time. One of the real issues that SMEs suffer from, and this is propagated by clients, client advisors, big main contractors, in my experience generally, is that everybody's got their own way of doing things. I've seen half a dozen standards and just on naming that sort of look nearly like the naming conventions in 1192 Part 1, but have had some arbitrary changes made. No functional changes relating to those arbitrary changes, but we're being asked to use them in our systems. And this happens along the way. It goes back to what I said at the beginning, that when I started to see this suite of documents, standards coming along, I was incredibly optimistic about the possibilities for actually pushing my company out to the wider market, and basically just preparing all of the documents that I needed to prove that I could do things when tenders came in. And since then, obviously, there's been an expansion of these standards, but people are still changing and changing and changing. And the worst thing about this for SMEs is that if you're effectively trying to commit yourself to a big supplier, say there are 15 big suppliers that you're targeting, if you've got to align yourself with 15 different standards, you can probably only try to slot yourself into 1 or 3 or maybe 5 at maximum of those supply chains. Now that's bad for SMEs, and it's bad for the industry. It's bad for competition, and actually I think in many ways it's against the original principles of Level 2 BIM as set out by Paul Morrell at the start. I remember Mervyn, who's sitting over there, he can contradict me if he likes, saying that he wanted to see tenders coming back that were very, very close in price. And the reason for that, the only way that can happen is by through high quality competition and standardisation of the way that information percolates, and an awful lot of that information is being generated by SMEs. Okay. Need I say more? I've never worked on what I would call a Level 2 project. I've worked on lots of projects that people describe as Level 2, and I can see that those projects are using some of the elements of Level 2. I remember a talk last year where Ben Wallbank asked the question, how many people here have signed a BIM protocol? And I think about 2 hands went up in a room of about 300. And, you know, we've got this, sorry to keep banging the drum about it, but we've got this process that's there, and yet we always seem to have to change it a little bit or rewrite the liability so that it's stacked in your favour instead of it being fair use of information, whatever. And again, it just dilutes the ideas, the principle behind level 2. And guess who suffers from that? Once again, it's the SMEs. So, yeah, well, I like this because it's a bit circular. You can't get away from the fact that SMEs provide most of what we do in our industry. Everybody in this room, big or small, is reliant on SMEs in one way or another. But we can't do it without your help. And just towing the party line and trying to sort of fit in to different holes and boxes and openings and standards on every different project we work in is not the way to do it. All I would say is, I'll finish by saying some of these challenges, obviously BIM4SMEs can help SMEs with, but there are an awful lot of them, the gloves off ones, I'd call them, that industry has to help SMEs deliver with. That's nearly all for me, and I'll just give Terry Goff, who's talking tomorrow in the morning session, also from BIM4SMEs, a quick punt. I hope you can come and see his talk too. Thank you.